Wonder if Douglas Shatford is watching this and what he's thinking. Are you turning a little white, Douglas? Feeling a little bit of a butterfly in your belly? Because I know what you've been doing. You've been prosecuting people who don't consent to governance and imposing federal statutes upon them, and you either know or you should know better. But you're making too much money to stop, aren't you? I, free man on the land, Robert Arthur of the Menard family, son of Eugene, born to Loretta, do hereby make oath and solemnly swear to preserve and maintain the public peace to the best of my abilities, and without favor or discrimination enforce the Criminal Code of Canada equally, and to expand and exercise my rights as a free man, ensuring their existence for future generations. So help me God. Okay, and the rest of it reads, because in order to be a peace officer, you have to make oath and be hired according to the criminal code. So someone has to hire me, and that underneath it says, we the undersigned, having heard and witnessed Robert Arthur make his oath, do hereby accept it and hire him to fulfill his oath as a duly sworn peace officer, offering as consideration the sum listed beside our signatures or a donation to Covenant House of an equal amount. So who wants in? There you go. Thank you very much.
There's a picture on my kitchen wall, looks like Jesus and his friends involved. There's a party getting started in the yard, and there's a couple getting steamy in the car parked in the drive. Was I too young to see this with my eyes? And by the pool that night, apparently the chemicals weren't mixed properly. You hit your head and then forgot your name, and you woke up at the bottom by the drain. And now your altitude and memories are shame. What about taking this empty cup and filling it up with a little bit more of innocence? I haven't had enough. It's probably because when you're young, it's okay to be easily ignored. I'd like to believe it was all about love for a child. When the house was left in shambles, well, who was there to handle all the broken bits of glass? Was it Mom who put my dad out on his ass, or the other way around? Well, I'm far too old to care about that now. Cup and filling it up with a little bit more of innocence. I haven't had enough. It's probably because when you're young, it's okay to be easily ignored. I'd like to believe it was all about love for a child. It's kinda nice to work the floor since the divorce. I've been enjoying both my Christmases and my birthday cakes. And haven't had enough. It's probably because when you're young, it's okay to be easily ignored. I'd love to believe it was all about love for a child. It was all about love.
You know what's funny about existing officers? They all think that they're true peace officers. But what happens if we convene a proper court of law where only people have a voice and only people are heard and all are treated equally? Well, I can point to the living, breathing souls who hired me. I have an actual contract with these people. The peace officers in the RCMP, Toronto Services, or any other police out there, they were not hired under lawful contract with another human being. They were hired by a non-existing fictional entity. So in our courts, the People's Court, where these fictional entities are not granted any status as a person, are not recognized, what contract do they have? They have nothing to point to establishing their right as a peace officer or their power as a peace officer. It's kind of like the Stanford experiment. They think because they're wearing the uniform, they make the law. They're going to be in for a rude shock when they find out they're not true peace officers, and we are, and we have far more power over them because we are hired by the people to police the police. The police are hired by the government to control the people.
See, now you're wishing for comedy, aren't you? Okay, folks, we're going to tell you a little story. I'm going to bring up some people and have some chats about stuff that's happened. I'd like to bring Wes up. Wes had a very interesting little story that happened to him driving. This is Static the Mic Addict. You'll be checking out some of his tunes later if you stick around. Come on up here, Wes. Meet everyone. Tell them your awesome story.
Okay, so I was living in Canmore and I was driving to Calgary every day for work, and I was a bit late for work, and I was going about 1:30ish, and it's a 110 zone. So I get pulled over and I'm really not in the mood. I'm late, I'm just kind of pissed off, and I get pulled over and I talk nice to this cop. I actually had it on my phone, which the battery is dead. I wanted to show you guys and show you the recording. But she comes up to the window, and the first thing I ask her is, I say, "Are you a peace officer?" And she says, "Yes." And I say, "Have you observed me breach the peace today?" And she's like, "Well, you were speeding." And first thing I said back was, "Well, that's a statute, and violating a statute doesn't constitute breaching the peace. If you look up breaching the peace, the definition is resorting to violence, threats, or intimidation, or wielding a dangerous article causing fear." So if that's the definition, then she hasn't observed me breach the peace. And according to the Constitution Act of 1982, you have the right to refuse interaction with a peace officer who's not observed you breach the peace. So when you hold them to their peace officer status, where they know that their only job is to preserve the peace and to uphold your rights, and when you point out that they're infringing on your rights, trying to act as a peace officer, then they really have nothing. So I started asking her, I was like, "Well, am I being detained?" And she's like, "I need to see your driver's license." I'm like, "No, am I being detained?" And she says, "No." So I'm like, "Am I free to go?" She says, "No." So I'm like, "Am I being detained?" She says, "No." "Am I free to go?" "No." And this went on for a little while. She was getting quite frustrated. And she's like, "Okay, well, if I'm not being detained, then I'm free to go, right? Am I free to go? I'm going to start driving away now." And I put the car in gear. And she's like, "No." I'm like, "So I'm being detained?" She's like, "No." I'm like, "I'm being detained." And we start driving away. And I got the craziest butter.